What's up, everybody? Welcome aboard to Bubba's Bottom Line, and of course, this is our weekly edition, and we also are doing short 3 to 5 minute daily updates. So make sure you check those out as well. And of course, as we take a look at last week, the biggest up week of the year. Didn't feel like it, but it certainly was statistically. So we had the biggest week. We see the S&Ps at new highs. We see the Dow at new highs, and NASDAQ made new highs. And it's really interesting that nothing bothers the market. There is no fear. We can just recklessly buy as much as we want. Hey, we'll see. Last week was what they call the triple witching expiration, where we now rolled all futures contracts over. I think one of the things you can look at here in the markets is a lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense. The continued pounding of the dollar, the continued rise of the euro. There's a lot of things going on here that has been built on the manipulation by the Federal Reserve, by the central banks around the world. Of course, they call them the currency wars. They call it a number of things. But in the meantime, I think in my opinion, it's obviously getting away from them. I think they have no idea. And we've always thought that the Federal Reserve had no idea what they were doing to begin with. So this is not new. I think you can tie the most government agencies into the world of clueless. We have no idea what we're doing, but we know as long as we can keep printing money, maybe we can make things happen. And I think this is more what we're seeing. I think one of the big issues to look at is the mass psychology of investors and traders are now is that this time is once again different. And of course, the more they get to this time is different idea, what we really end up with is a market that will eventually start to collapse again. Again, the collapse is not the end of the world. The collapse is something that is healthy. And I think this is one of the things that we all miss out is you need to weed out the crap, okay? You need the bad companies to go out. So that's one of the problems that we have. But of course, investors are willing to jump right in. And of course, almost every analyst to a person, man or woman, says that this time is different. But we all know that it's never going to be different and that the markets are being driven by one thing. And of course, you continue to hear the earnings and employment state. In fact, somebody wrote me a nasty letter saying that, hey, well, the market's going up because of great earnings. I go, okay, fine. Earnings may be good, and certainly by the numbers, they are very good. But they're not helping the economy. This is where the separation of Wall Street and Main Street has to be understood. Yes, if you're a corporation, you're doing great, okay? Because you're absconding with money that you shouldn't have in the first place because it's been made so cheap by the imbeciles that run the Federal Reserve that we have a potential for corporations to get as much money as they can, buy back their stock, eliminate the shareholders, eliminate, of course, the middle class, the small guy. It's the same theory over and over again. And we don't seem to understand the damage that's being done by these organizations and by the banks. Okay, this is again a critical mass, a critical problem that is going to lead us down the world of disaster. Now, if you just take a look at the increasing costs, now we hear once again, I don't know why it's our theme today of the geniuses, but inflation. Well, your healthcare is doubled, at least. Who makes enough to cover that $18,000 to $20,000 to $25,000 a year in healthcare? That's why we can't get the growth going. So you can listen to the cheerleaders talking about how great the growth is going to be, and of course every bull has been right every single trade here because all we do is go higher right now. But eventually, these things will come into play. This is where the problems come in, all right? And at the end of the day, Okay, what we have here is a failure to communicate. All right, Strother Martin, Paul Newman, in case you're wondering, Cool Hand Luke. But the problems are simple. All right, you've got the rich being taken care of by the Fed. Now, all of the trillions of dollars that we have in debt here, okay, we can call this a debt crisis. We have now pushed over the $20 trillion mark. Now, all of the money, the $4 trillion that the Fed created out of thin air, went to the banks, and what the banks do with it, they took it and gave it back to the full faith and credit of the federal government. So not only did the Fed, who's not a government agency, print money, the banks took the money and gave it back to the full faith and credit of the United States government and did not liquefy it through the system. In other words, keeping the middle class from participating in the greatest recovery in history. Now, this is post-World War II. This is the second biggest rally ever in time. The last one that was as big was 1991 to 2001, and we know how that ended up. Now, again, it doesn't mean that you can't make money throughout this, but the issue is you cannot continue to push the debt down the road and say, hey, that's no big deal. That is always the big deal. That is always the ending of all of these markets. And I think one of the issues and one of the problems that we're not recognizing is the amount of debt that we're creating. Now, you cannot continue to kick the can down the road and ignore the amount of debt that's being created, because our kids, our grandchildren, everybody else are not going to be able to satisfy this debt. All right? So you take all that into consideration, and now you've got we'll call it the vanishing VIX. Volatility is almost near, again, record lows with market record highs. It makes sense. However, what we're not understanding is that complacency is the architecture of our downfall. We have now once again become so complacent with what's going on in the investing world, very similar to the way that we've treated the terrorist attack very complacently. I mean, you know, if you look and you say, well, North Korea markets didn't react, because why? Because remember one thing, it's always about the money. Right? Life comes down to two things. One of them's money, right? And that money has no shame, it has no conscience. And I'm not saying that it should. I'm saying that we have ignored the North Korean bombings, the terrorist attacks. I mean, we just had, once again, in England, or London, another terrorist attack on Friday. But nobody cares, right? Nobody feels the need to show any fear or any problems with the overall terrorist attack, with North Korea, with ISIS. Nothing bothers anybody. And again, this goes back to that same theory, all right, that nobody cares. And it's only about the money. But if you look at the bigger picture, the money that we're supposed to bail out and create the inflationary cycle, which that's a story for another day, because the inflationary cycle should be driven more from a supply-demand model, not because it should be there. But you've got a system that is not working. You have a system that is not fulfilling the average American. Average Americans, average middle-class people throughout the world support and grow every single economy. When you don't have them, you have a breakdown of the system, because the middle class are the spenders. The middle class are the ones that take care of everything. And if you think that we are any different at this time, you're wrong. Okay, this market is not different. This time is not different. There is going to be eventually a market meltdown. Now again, I'm not saying that the markets are going down forever. I'm telling you that there's going to be a correction. And the longer that they carry this market from here, the bigger the correction's going to be. In the meantime, we're going to step out of here for a break. This is Bubba's Bottom Line, as we like to call it, real markets for real people. Remember to get Bubba's daily updates every day after the close at BubbaTrading.com. And don't forget to watch the Bubba Show, or not watch it, but listen to it, at LibertyTalk.fm every day from 2 to 3 Eastern Time. We're going to step out here for a break. We'll be right back with more of Bubba's Bottom Line after the break. Todd Bubba Horwitz, Bubba's Bottom Line, coming right back to you. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line. This is me, Todd Bubba Horwitz, and I hope you everybody enjoyed your weekend, and I hope you enjoyed football. If you're a fan, a lot of upsets on Saturday, and you know, if you're watching and you like it, it's pretty interesting. And of course, we've now seen Harvey and Irma kind of die down, and you know, one of the things about these two hurricanes and tropical storms is that the insurance companies were set up for them. That is one of the reasons for the rally. You know, we haven't had a major storm like this for so long that these insurance companies built up reserves, which is fine. All right, did create a rally, and no surprise there. But I think that what it is going to do is it will create some growth in those areas. It will create some jobs in those areas because we're going to have to rebuild. But at the end, we still have not solved the major problem. And the major problem is, number one, real earnings are down. Now, you can listen to those jackasses on TV telling you that earnings are growing, but they're not growing because of the cost of everything else. Now, this is where the inflation gets tricky, because you're paying more for goods and services you use every single day. All right? They're talking about deflation because look at the farmers, their grain markets are getting creamed, but my food at the grocery store is not going down. All right? My coffee at well, I don't go to Starbucks because they're too expensive, but Starbucks ain't going down. Their costs are going down, but they're not going down in prices there. So when you look at this picture and you go, what's wrong with this picture? It's tilted to the wealthy. There is no flow, there is no velocity of money going on, okay? Because the middle class isn't getting any of it. So you look at real earnings are down, especially when you bring in the concern of cost. Healthcare being the biggest, all right? But there's taxes, you know, and I'm not thinking about income taxes, I got real estate taxes, other taxes that are continue to go higher because the Federal Reserve is trying to inflate our overall asset base so that we can pay more taxes to these ridiculous things. So I can have the privilege of paying a lot more money for a house that I own, all right? So I get to pay for the privilege of living here. I don't know, okay? So now you take a look at retail sales. Now, everybody goes, it was a shock that they fell on Friday. Is it really a shock? Where's the retail sales business going to come from? If you've already stripped the biggest spenders, okay, the biggest supporters of any economy, the middle class, if you've already stripped them of their pay, if you've already costing them more for healthcare, okay, if you're paying more for real estate taxes, if you're paying more for housing because rents are higher, everything is higher, okay, where's the money going to come from? How are we going to get there? So now we take all of this, and this is all created by the lunacy of the Federal Reserve, because this destruction is almost like they had it planned to destroy the class of people, because there's no reason for what is going on here when you should have certainly, you could just let what's going to happen instead of trying to prevent it. This is the problem with the Keynesian view of economics, is to continue to try to eliminate a recession. Now, small recessions over time are much better than one massive recession, okay? But they don't seem to understand that. And of course, they're meeting this week. And I guess the question is will their language this week, will they finally cause the correction? And I find it hard to believe that they will. I mean, I don't know that the correction is coming anytime soon. I thought it would be here by now, but apparently it's not. And I don't know that it's going to come soon. Now, again, I'm not going to buy here. I think buying here is totally irresponsible. And just in full disclosure, in 2014, I said that selling would be irresponsible. Now, again, buying here is kind of funny. All right, we've got stocks going up in leaps and bounds, but the overall underlying surface of the market is not that strong. okay, we continue to build this house of cards that ignores the most important things that you can possibly talk about. Debt, debt, debt. That's the problem. You are not going to get away. If they're not going to relieve this debt, what's going to happen? Okay? It's an amazing fact that we continue to ignore how much debt is being created on a daily basis. We're going to be now probably adding to the deficit over $1 trillion a year. This debt. Now, when are these politicians going to wake up, okay, and say, hey, we need to do something about this debt problem? No, but they're going to want to do is just raise the debt ceiling, because again, they want to leave the problem for the next group, okay? They want to leave the problem and kick the can down the road. At the end of the day, what needs to happen is we need to let the system flush out the weak. We need to get back to real business, and we need to get back to trying to figure out a way to get real growth. And how do we do that? Well, the first thing you do is you start with putting together a plan that allows some manufacturing to come back here. But of course, our regulations in this country are so onerous and so unfair and so much tilted against the small guy. You know, you look at the banks. We've talked about this a number of times. You look at the banks. Big bank, let's say JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, any one of those community banks, okay? Basically, they have the same costs, okay, to do business. So if this guy's taking in $1 billion and this one's taking in $1 million, this one's going out of business because they can't compete. Where is the fair and equal practice? You know, we worry about Amazon being a monopoly. What about the big banks? Are they not a monopoly? Have they not restricted the ability for the small banks? And every time a small bank becomes somewhat successful, what happens? They get bought out by the bigger banks. We need to go back to the Glass-Steagall and screw this Dodd-Frank. This is ridiculous. And this is not just in the banking business. You know, there's a lot of businesses that are affected by financial regulations. You know, you have brokerage houses, you have introducing brokers that almost can't make it in business today because they've had to drop their costs of commissions and things so low, yet their costs of regulations continue to go higher. Now, you have to tell me how we can exist when your regulations, when an auditor can come into you and audit you for months, which costs you God knows how much money, all right? And the big banks, they tell the auditors to go flip off, all right? And of course, they've got so many people. I don't know if you remember the scene from The Wolf of Wall Street when he put the regulators in a room, turned the air down to about 40, and froze them out and tried to get rid of them that way. Right? But again, they can park in your place forever. But yet, nobody cares. And this is, again, these things all tie together. So as the Fed meets this week, what are they going to possibly say? Grain prices, corn, wheat, and soybeans are down at levels that are ridiculous. All right? I mean, I think they're a buy personally, but they're at ridiculous levels. Oil rallied a little bit, but you probably should break here. Gold has been in very good shape, but why not higher? And then, of course, if you tie in the Bitcoin, because the Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies, you know, Bitcoin had a dramatic, very bad week. Since it hit 5,000, it lost 40% on the low, and now it's rallied back a little bit. It's back to around 3,500. And I think it's probably, you know, a reasonable buy level here. But I think what we're missing, the point we're missing here, is that the people, the anti-central banking people, which should be the majority of us, because again, when you look at what they do not do a very good job for you and me, okay? The Federal Reserve, first of all, is private, right? But they benefit only the banks. They don't benefit the average guy in the street. So they should be, at worst, audited, at best, abolished. The ability to manipulate my currency and my money needs to be stopped, all right? because they're not doing their intended job. And I don't remember all the regulations, but a lot of things they're doing are on the very edge of legality. In fact, I would venture to say that some of the things they're doing are against the Constitution. Whether or not they're illegal or not, that's another story. But again, there's a lot of things that will go on throughout all of government, and although the Fed is private, they are in cahoots with Congress, okay? So they're gonna go ahead and raise the debt ceiling, they're gonna create more money, not good. They're gonna talk this week, and I'm sure, I can't imagine what they would possibly do that would change anything. Now it could, again, one of the things we know for sure is markets don't announce themselves, but certainly I would not be playing right now for a major collapse, but I would be very leery that it could happen at any day. And I think if we go back to 1987, okay, in 87, August, we hit a high, very similar to this year, and of course, everybody kept jumping in and wanted to buy because this time was different, and the overall complacency is we're ready to rock and roll. At the end of the day, we all know what happened then, and we all know what happened in 01, we all know what happened in 08. Same problems, different characters, same problems. Just time to be very careful here. Again, don't stretch yourself out. Don't get in too much debt trying to get into the market, okay? This is Bubba's Bottom Line. We're going to step out here for a break and come back with our commentary, but make sure, first of all, that you check out Bubba's Daily Updates, which come out every single day after the market close. They're about 3 to 5 minutes. Get the Bubba Show every day at LIBERATE.fm, 2 to 3 Eastern Time, and check out BubbaTrading.com. We're going to step out here for a break. This is Bubba's Bottom Line. We'll be right back with our commentary after the break. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line. This is Todd Bubba Horwitz, and this is time for my commentary. Maybe I'll be like Andy Rooney, okay? But in the meantime, I purposely didn't talk about China, North Korea, and Russia during the rest of the show because that was my commentary. And what I want to know is, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about the sanctions? Now, right now, from my understanding, North Korea's got about 90% sanctions. My question is, why isn't it 100%? It's my question. I mean, pretty logical question. Why are we giving them any leeway? Right? You know, once they shot off those last missiles last Thursday, why aren't we shutting them down? Okay. And I asked this question last week, but I'm going to ask again this week. Why don't we squeeze China? Now, Steve Mnuchin went out and said that we have the ability to do so, and that anybody that is tied to North Korea, any bank, whatever, we shut them down. Why are we not doing that? What are we possibly waiting for? Now, I would venture to say that, I don't know what President Trump is thinking, again, because certainly he's smart enough not to open up his mouth now and say what he wants to do. But I don't know if they're all in agreement here. But we need to be, in my opinion, much stricter on China, because they're the ones that have the full ability to shut this down. Because North Korea has no interest in us, and they'd like to wipe us out. They'd like to, I think what was the term where they want to turn us into ashes? I think it is something of that nature. And I think the wild card in here is Russia. Russia and China are big trading partners. Now, I don't know about their personal relationship, but I know they're big trading partners. But I think they're enjoying, and really this is helping them in their plight with us being so tied up with what's going on in North Korea, which is why we need to step up right now and say, China, we're cutting off trade. North Korea, you're out. And then that's it, right? Because, look, if we as Americans have to pay a little bit more for product, first of all, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think that this whole global, using China, what had happened is when cost of goods got so expensive here, it made sense to farm out. But I think that now we could do things for a lot less. With today's technology, I think we have the ability. But that, it's a story for another day. But at the end of the day, we need to shut China down right now, okay? Because everybody's worried about our sovereign debt. What do you think? Is China going to foreclose? I mean, are they going to call a collection attorney? Okay, really? Are we worried about that? Look, yes, we owe them a ton of money. All right, they own our bonds, but bonds go bad all the time. And I'm not saying to default on our bonds. I'm saying that we need to stop trading with China right now. We need to put them in a world of hurt, so that they're forced and compelled to shut down North Korea, because they've got the power over North Korea, but they're basically sitting on the sidelines right now doing nothing. And to me, I think that's a tragedy. This is where I believe the problems come in, and I don't want to see another view of Osama bin Laden or more ISIS terrorist attacks. It's time to stop. It's time for us to flex our muscles and quit screwing around with all of these people, okay? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't work. That's the whole key. When you're dealing with people that are irrational, you can do all you want about overall sanctions. Do you think they really care? Okay, they've got other people giving them stuff. It's like ISIS. ISIS was stealing oil out of the desert. Didn't matter. So President Trump, I'm saying to you that you need to go to China now, and you need to shut them down and say, hey, you either taking our North Korea down or we're stopping trade. Okay? Yeah, maybe it'll hurt for a little while, but at the end of the day, it's time for us to step up and flex our muscles, and enough of the garbage, enough of the nonsense, and enough of the bull. It's over. It's got to be over. Otherwise, we're going to be in that same lousy chain of nothing, waiting to get bombed and then reacting. I don't want to react. I want to be proactive. Anyways, that'll do it for today, everybody. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for watching and being here. And we will see you back here next week on Bubba's Bottom Line. Remember, you get Bubba's Daily Update every day, and you get other great things. So make sure you check out. Go to BubbaTrading.com, and also don't forget to catch the Bubba Show every single day at LibertyTalk.fm, 2 to 3 Eastern Time. Everybody have a great day. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time. Bubba's Bottom Line. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.